I was just saying Louis doesn't understand social distancing. So he goes up like wanting to cuddle everything, and particularly any babies younger than him.
Something unexpected appears to have happened inside the royal family, as new reports claim that Prince William and Princess Catherine have finally spoken about why Prince Louis was kept away from the public for a period of time.
Well, Prince Louis' vision has emerged of him absolutely beaming.
The claims have sparked fresh questions across Britain, with many people wondering if there was more going on behind the palace walls than anyone realized. But what really led William and Catherine to keep Louis out of the spotlight? And why has their reported explanation left so many royal watchers completely shocked? So, what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal story, please subscribe. Princess Catherine's emotional confession. So, ever since King Charles began his cancer treatment in early 2024, Prince William has taken on more royal duties than ever before. At the same time, Princess Catherine has been focused on her own health, while also trying to keep life as normal as possible for their children. That has meant protecting Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and especially Prince Louis from too much public attention. But recently, something happened that no one expected. Last week, Catherine sat in front of a camera and did something the palace almost never allows. She had a prepared speech in front of her. Like most royal statements, it had been carefully written by the communications team, checked by advisors, and polished until every word sounded exactly right. She started by reading from the script. Then, after looking at it for a moment, she quietly placed the papers face down on the table. Instead of continuing with the prepared words, she began speaking from the heart about her youngest son, Prince Louis. There were no notes, no approved lines, and no warning to palace staff that she planned to do this. That alone was surprising. But what happened next made the moment even more emotional. About 2/3 of the way through her remarks, while talking about Louis, Catherine suddenly became emotional and tears filled her eyes. She did not stop speaking or ask for a break. Instead, she kept going, speaking through the tears. In many ways, that was even harder to watch than if she had paused completely, because it showed just how deeply she felt every word she was saying. That is what made the moment stand out so much. Kensington Palace is known for doing things very carefully. Unscripted. Interviews are extremely rare, and emotional moments are almost never seen in public. Every update about Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis is normally planned well in advance, approved by advisors, and released only when the timing is exactly right. This is not just how things happen by chance. It has been the palace's approach for more than 10 years. So the biggest question is not simply what Catherine said. The real question is what made someone as careful and disciplined as her decide to put the script aside and speak openly. Clearly, something had been happening behind the scenes for quite some time. People across Britain had started noticing that things did not seem quite right, even if they could not explain exactly why. Royal events were being changed or rearranged without much notice. Schedules shifted at the last minute. Prince Louis was missing from several public appearances, yet no reason was given. Naturally, people began asking questions. Whenever reporters tried to find out why Louis was not being seen, the palace gave the same short and polite reply. They simply said it was a matter of family privacy. No further explanation was offered, and there was never any promise that one would come later. As time went on, that silence became impossible to ignore. According to the claims, the decision to keep quiet was not made by accident. It was a strategy that Prince William supported from the very beginning. He believed his children deserved as much privacy as possible and worked hard to protect them from constant public attention. However, not everyone inside the royal household agreed with that approach. Some advisors reportedly warned William that saying nothing for too long could eventually create even more questions and encourage public speculation. They believed the lack of information might end up causing the very problem they were trying to avoid. For years, William stood by his decision and continued defending it. But in the end, the situation reportedly unfolded in a way that few people inside Kensington Palace had expected, leaving Catherine to speak from the heart in a moment that surprised almost everyone watching. But why did Prince William keep Prince Louis hidden for so long? Is it the royal family's plan to protect their children from the public? Let's find out. The secret royal plan. So, let's start with the policy itself, because this was never just an idea. Prince George was born in 2013. About a year later, Prince William and Princess Catherine decided how they wanted to raise their children. Since then, they have hardly changed that plan. Earlier this month, the Scottish Daily Express described it as a 10-year plan to give their children as normal a life as possible. That description came from published reporting, not from me. In other words, this was never something they made up as they went along. Every decision was carefully planned. They chose where the children would appear, how often people would see them, what age they would attend public events, and who they would be with.
Come on, Tracian's team. If you think about it, you have actually seen this plan working for years without even noticing it.
The three children have only appeared in public a few times each year. Maybe at Christmas in Sandringham, on the Buckingham Palace balcony during major celebrations, at a carefully selected sporting event, or in family photos taken by Catherine herself.
She
usually took those pictures with her own camera and released them when she felt the time was right. That was no accident. The thinking was simple. A photo released by the family is a photo that nobody else can make money from. It gave William and Catherine control over their children's privacy. But the reason William built this system goes much deeper than modern media strategy. To understand it, you have to go back to one heartbreaking day in September 1997. William was just 15 years old when he walked behind his mother, Princess Diana's coffin through the streets of London while millions of people around the world watched. Then, almost immediately after Diana's death, her private life became public. Her letters were published. Her handwriting was examined. Her clothes were displayed and sold. Recordings of her voice, which she never expected anyone else to hear, became public. At just 15, William saw exactly what could happen when every detail of a royal life became public. And ever since then, for nearly 30 years, he has done everything possible to stop the same thing from happening to his own children. That is where every closed door in this story begins. Now, over the last several months, that carefully planned system started to break down. To understand why, it's important to look at the timeline. Prince Louis is 8 years old. As the youngest child, he has always had the least defined royal role, but he has also received the most protection. That has been true from the very beginning. George, now 13, already has a future everyone understands. He is the future king, and people know what lies ahead for him. Charlotte, who is 11, has slowly become more comfortable with public appearances as she has grown older. Louis, however, has remained the child his parents tried hardest to keep away from the spotlight, and for a long period this year, he was kept away almost completely. Events that had been penciled into the family's calendar quietly disappeared. 2 family occasions he had attended in previous years went ahead without him. After a while, royal watchers began noticing the pattern. They started counting the months since Louis had last been seen in public. And once people started counting, the rumors began. Ironically, the very policy that was supposed to stop speculation ended up creating even more of it. That was the first of several ironies in this story. Still, before talking about where the plan went wrong, it is only fair to recognize just how successful it had been. For almost 10 years, it worked remarkably well. Very few royal children have ever enjoyed the level of privacy that George, Charlotte, and Louis have had. George reached the age of 9 after appearing in public only a handful of times. Charlotte has never had a school photograph sold to newspapers. There are no long-distance camera shots showing any of the children crying, falling over, or simply having a bad day like every child sometimes does. Those moments have remained private. Now compare that with William and Harry when they were children. By the time they were 8 years old, they were regular features in newspapers. Photographers waited outside their school gates, hoping to capture every little moment. William wanted something completely different for his own children. Despite enormous pressure from the media, he built a system that protected them. Why did Prince William suddenly stop Prince Louis from attending every royal event? How did one decision about Prince Louis quietly affect the entire royal family? Let's take a closer look. Prince William's shocking decisions. William's first reaction was to shut everything down. He immediately cancelled every public event involving Louis and made it clear that he did not want to talk about the situation. In his mind, missing a royal event did not matter at all if it meant protecting his son. After all, Louis had already started wondering if there was a reason he was being kept away from the public. To be fair, it is hard to blame William for thinking that way. Any parent would want to protect their child. But looking back, that decision became the point where everything slowly started to unravel. Ironically, the people who warned him about it were the same people the royal family often ignores. Those senior advisors pointed out that if Louis kept missing public appearances, people would naturally start asking questions. And it is important to understand what a royal engagement actually means, because that word carries a lot of weight inside the palace. A royal engagement is an official duty or public appearance carried out on behalf of the monarchy. In many ways, the public life of the royal family is built around these events. They are planned months in advance, carefully recorded, and officially announced. So when someone suddenly stops showing up, it does not go unnoticed. It becomes part of the public record. You do not need someone inside the palace to tell you something has changed. All you have to do is look at the official schedule. Because of that, the advisors wanted the palace to release a simple explanation before rumors had a chance to spread. It did not have to reveal personal details. It only needed to be short and general, giving the press office something they could point to instead of saying nothing at all. And contrary to what many people believe, those advisors were not being cold or heartless. Their entire job is to think far ahead, sometimes as much as 18 months into the future, and figure out which quiet moments could eventually become major headlines. But this is where everything begins to make sense. They had seen this happen before. Back in 2024, Catherine disappeared from public duties for a period of time without much explanation. As the silence continued, rumors grew bigger and bigger. Before long, wild theories were spreading everywhere, causing real harm before the palace finally explained what had actually happened. That experience was exactly why the advisors spoke up this time. They were not asking William to expose his son or reveal private family matters. They were simply reminding him that when there is no official explanation, people almost always create their own. And once that happens, the family no longer controls the story. Even so, William stood firm. Month after month, he refused every suggestion. He would not allow Louis's situation to become a public discussion while his son was still confused and frightened. In many ways, his decision came from personal experience. After spending more than 30 years living under intense media attention, he knew better than anyone how damaging public scrutiny could be. So, in one sense, William was absolutely right. The danger was real, but where he may have been mistaken was in believing that complete silence would solve the problem. Instead, the silence began to spread beyond Louis. It slowly affected the entire household, and before anyone realized it, it had reached the other two children as well. George was 13 years old at the time. That is an age where you are old enough to know something is wrong, but still too young to fully understand what is happening. Instead of asking questions, George quietly decided that his role was to stay calm and help however he could. As the weeks passed, he became quieter. He was more careful, more responsible, and always trying to make life easier around the house. From the outside, it looked like he was handling everything remarkably well. His parents believed he was coping. How did one silent change inside the palace leave young Prince Louis confused without anyone realizing it. Why did a simple conversation between Prince William and Prince Louis become the moment that changed everything? Let's take a closer look. Charlotte's quiet understanding. Now, this is where everything starts to make sense. Charlotte, who was 11 years old, handled the situation very differently from everyone else. She noticed every closed door. She noticed conversations that suddenly changed when she walked into a room. She heard voices become quieter. She saw adults quickly finding reasons to leave. No one ever sat her down to explain what was happening. But the truth is, 11-year-olds often understand far more than adults think they do. Little by little, Charlotte put the pieces together on her own, and she came surprisingly close to understanding the truth. But here's what most people didn't realize. Instead of making the situation about herself, Charlotte quietly focused on helping her younger brother. She began leaving handwritten jokes beside Louis's bed. Not just once, but again and again. It became her own little routine. She had figured out that whenever Louis laughed, even for a brief moment, he seemed happier and more like himself. So she kept giving him those moments without telling anyone what she was doing. And that's where the story becomes even more emotional. Later, after overhearing members of the household talking about the growing public attention surrounding the family, Charlotte went to find her mother. She asked if strangers were worried about Louis. Then she asked another question that no 11-year-old should ever have to ask. Is Louis going to have to answer all of them? Think about that for a moment. She shouldn't have been carrying thoughts like that. But because nobody had explained enough, she filled in the missing pieces herself. But before we get to the biggest moment in this story, there's something important to understand. The most powerful scene hasn't happened yet. It comes later between William and his son. It happens while they are sitting together on the floor. If you saw that moment without knowing everything that came before it, it would simply look like a father talking with his little boy. You would never understand why it completely changed Prince William. And that's exactly why everything leading up to that moment matters so much. Meanwhile, Catherine was carrying a completely different burden. She spent time sitting with Charlotte, gently explaining that some things simply take time. At the same time, she was barely sleeping. She was carrying fears she didn't want William to see. At the same time, another quiet battle was taking place. William was doing exactly the same thing. He was hiding his own worries because he wanted to protect Catherine. Neither of them realized they had both stopped talking honestly about how they truly felt. And this is where the real problem began. Long periods of stress don't always lead to loud arguments. Sometimes nothing dramatic happens at all. There are no angry words, no obvious distance. Instead, kindness slowly becomes quieter. Conversations become shorter. Feelings stay hidden. Before long, they found themselves living under the same roof, while quietly carrying separate burdens. Right in the middle of all this was 8-year-old Louis. He was far too young to understand how the royal institution worked, but he was old enough to notice when something felt different. Anyone who has watched the royal family over the past 6 years knows exactly what Louis is like. He is the child who brings life into every quiet room. He struggles to sit still during ceremonies. He pulls funny faces. He asks endless questions. He fills every moment with energy. His playful expressions have often ended up on newspaper front pages, sometimes looking like they would have made his late great-grandmother raise an eyebrow. But then everything changed. As the youngest of the 3 children, Louis was never expected to carry the same weight as George or Charlotte. People often talked about George's future. They discussed Charlotte's role, but Louis was simply allowed to enjoy being a child. That was one of the kindest decisions his parents ever made. At the same time, it meant nobody had prepared him for what was about to happen. One day, he simply stopped going to places. No one fully explained why. What he noticed wasn't a meeting or a difficult conversation. It was something much quieter. The house became quieter. The adults lowered their voices. The atmosphere changed. Little by little, even Louis could feel that something wasn't right. And that growing silence led to the night when everything finally came to the surface. It happened after the children had gone to bed, and that's when everything reached a turning point. It was a private conversation between William and Catherine. From that moment on, nothing would feel quite the same. What did Catherine tell William that completely changed the conversation behind palace doors? Did one handwritten statement from Catherine reveal a painful truth the palace could no longer ignore? Let's take a closer look. Catherine's palace statement. Now, Catherine did not write her statement all at once. She sat down several times, writing it slowly by hand on sheets of paper. When she was finished, she placed those pages on the table in front of William and asked him to read them. Right beside her handwritten pages was the palace's official draft. This is where things started to become very different. If you have never heard the term before, a palace-approved statement is carefully written by royal advisors before it is released to the public. Every word is chosen with great care. The goal is to say just enough without creating new questions or starting fresh headlines. But Catherine felt something was missing. To her, those carefully written words felt empty. They talked about the situation without admitting how frightening it had really been. They spoke about things getting better, but never explained what the family had actually gone through. The statement sounded safe, but it did not sound real, and that was the part she simply could not accept. Then everything changed. William read the first line of Catherine's version. Before he even reached the second line, he shook his head. He reminded her that once a message is made public, it never truly disappears. It can be shared again and again, picked apart, and quoted for years. He asked if she was ready to see people who had never even met Louis talking about him for the rest of his life. As he spoke, his voice became louder. But halfway through his sentence, he suddenly stopped. And that was the moment they both realized something. The anger they were hearing was not really anger at all. It was fear hiding behind strong words. Even so, Catherine refused to back down, and this is where the whole conversation took an unexpected turn. She quietly told William that Louis had started believing he was being kept away from the public because his family was ashamed of him. Think about that for a second. Not because he was sick, not because anything was wrong with him, but because, at just 8 years old, he had noticed that he was always the one who stayed behind. He saw everyone else going out while he remained at home. No one explained why. Whenever he walked into a room, conversations suddenly changed. People became quieter. Like many children would, he filled in the missing pieces himself. A child who is never given an answer will usually create one. The answer Louis created was heartbreaking. He convinced himself that he was the problem. That was the painful result of years of trying to protect him. The very plan meant to keep him safe had slowly made him question his own worth. Catherine then pushed the palace's official draft across the table. She told William there was nothing in those carefully chosen words that sounded anything like the little boy they had nearly watched lose confidence in himself. And that was not all. She pointed out that George and Charlotte had also been affected. George had started paying attention to every closed door in the house. Charlotte had learned to lower her voice whenever Louis was mentioned. She had even begun leaving little jokes on his bed, because she had figured out by herself that making him laugh helped bring back the happy brother she knew. Why did King Charles reject the palace's statement? Could one emotional sentence have changed the way the royal family handled one of its most private moments? Let's find out. The hidden palace meeting. So, that night, William and Catherine finally reached an important turning point together. Catherine would speak out, but only to a certain point. She had no intention of sharing every private detail of what their family had been through. At the same time, she was no longer willing to pretend that the past several months had been easy. And that is when everything started to change. Even after they agreed on what they wanted to say, there was still one person who had the power to stop the entire statement. Ironically, he was also the one person in the family who truly understood what they were going through. That person was King Charles. Later that evening, Charles received the draft after one of his regular briefings. Before reading it, he quietly asked everyone else to leave the room. Then he sat alone and carefully read every page. When he finished, he went back and read it all over again. But then, something caught his attention. He reached the line that talked about a child confusing privacy with shame. He slowly took off his glasses, placed them on the desk, and sat there for several moments without touching them again. There was a reason that sentence affected him so deeply. Charles had spent his entire life inside a royal system that teaches people to hide their feelings before they are even old enough to understand what that kind of silence can cost. He learned that lesson as a child. Later, he passed the same lesson on to his own sons, and as the world knows, one of those sons has spent the last 20 years speaking openly about the emotional damage that approach caused. And this is where the conversation became even more serious. Charles asked his son just one question. Was this statement truly meant to help Prince Louis, or was it simply making the adults around him feel better? It was a difficult question to hear, but it was also the right one. Every family believes it is protecting its child during hard times. But sometimes, without realizing it, the adults are actually protecting themselves from having to say painful things out loud. But there was one important difference. They had removed the part where Prince Louis thanked the people who had supported him. In fact, they had taken out the only sentence in the entire statement that truly sounded like it came from the young prince himself, and that became the deciding moment. Charles refused to approve the edited version. According to someone who witnessed the discussion, the king believed that removing Louis's own words might protect the monarchy, but it would fail the child at the center of the story. So, what do you think about Prince William and Catherine's emotional moment? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.